around building viable democratic institutions in the country. Democracy involves quite a number of institutions and processes, and these include political parties, the media, the judiciary, the electorate, and of course INEC, which is the body saddled with the responsibility of conducting elections in the country. But then there have been questions around our elections and how we can build viable democratic institutions in the country. We'll be having this conversation with Mr. Jide Ojo, Public Affairs Analyst, and is joining us via Zoom this morning. It's our pleasure to have you.
Tanya, good morning. How's Lagos today?
Very well, thank you.
Very well, thank you. We've been on this uninterrupted journey of democracy since 1999, but then it's been a combination of so many things with issues and concerns being raised around the quality of our elections and our elected leaders as well. But in your own perspective, how would you rate the journey so far?
Thanks for the opportunity to be on your show this morning. Greetings from Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. For me, the trajectory of our democratic institution and consolidation is a work in progress. We are talking of 1999 being the beginning of our Fourth Republic. Don't forget that we had First Republic, which was truncated by the military on January 15, 1966. We had the Second Republic that was truncated by the military on December 31, 1983. We had the Third Republic that was truncated by the military on August 27, June 27, 1993. So this is the longest stretch we have had. 7 successive elections, general elections, in 1999, 2003, 2007, 2011, 2015, 2019, and then we are waiting for 2027. So thus far, we are making snail pace progress, but nothing revolutionary. Our democratic institutions are still weak and needs to be strengthened. You talked about political parties, the electoral management body, the political contestants, even the media, the civil society organization, the security agencies, the judiciary, and our legislative assembly, whether at the federal or state level. All of them needs to be strengthened because their performances thus far is still suboptimal.
Right, Jide, you agreed that these institutions must be strengthened. Let's now begin to look at what are the ways by which we can, as a country, ensure that these institutions are strengthened and we do not build our democracy around individuals, but around these institutions, because you've also mentioned that only viable and strong institutions can actually ensure the success of every democracy. So what are the steps that we need to start taking or making especially that we're waiting to conduct another election in January?
So it's just paying attention and keeping fidelity with the rule of law. It is that simple. If the 3 arms of government will work within the ambience of rule of law, you know, under rule of law, there are 3 pillars. We have the supremacy of the law, we have equality before the law, and we have fundamental human rights. If these 3, if there is fidelity with these 3 pillars of the rule of law, Nigeria will make appreciable progress. Situations where one arm of government usurps the role or the power of the other, situations where one arm of the government is undermining the performance and functionality of the other, cannot get us there. So, yes, we should build institutions not around individuals, but the structures. But in political science, we learn about these things and systems systems of optimization or something of that nature. The bottom line is that if you allow the system to work the way it's designed, you will get the outcome, you will get the result, and the result will be outstanding. But if you continue to undermine, let's take the instance of the political class. We are preparing for the next general elections. But if the political class will not allow INEC to have a free hand, if the funding that is due to INEC will not be released to it on time, if you tie the hands of INEC with the kind of law you are putting INEC to implement, it's not going to work. Look at the whole brouhaha about the electoral 2026, where many civil society organizations and the media were saying that, look, there are some provisions in this electoral act which is anti-democratic. There are some provisions that should not be there. And why are you, for instance, let me give you a practical instance. The funding for INEC in 2022 electoral act, the funding for INEC is supposed to be released to it 1 year to the next election. But this electoral act decided that it should be reduced to 6 months to the next election. Why do you have to do that? You know that funding is the lifeblood, is the oxygen by which an electoral management body can perform. It needs to do procurement, it needs to do recruitment, it needs to do so many things. Voter education, litigations, we are going to cut so many things. So if the funding is not made available, as at when, how can you expect the institution to perform optimally? Right. Then you see the spate of violence. Look at the way we are talking of a state election coming up in about two weeks' time. Look at the spate of violence that has been unleashed on that state. Lives have been lost. There have been recorded fatalities. You saw the violence on starting of permanent voters card last Sunday in Oku. You have seen the attempt to take over the motor parks. Why are all of this happening on the eve of an election? Is it the electoral management body that is doing all of this? It's the political class trying to outsmart and outwit each other. So once there is a rule of law, you are on the pathway to strengthening democratic institutions.
All right, Jide. We cannot have this kind of discussion without including INEC, which you mentioned earlier. So how critical is the independence of INEC when, and that of the judiciary in strengthening our democratic institutions?
Very, very important. And let me give kudos to their lordship at the Court of Appeal for the judgment of yesterday. Look at what the political class was trying to do. The registering 6 political parties on the eve of an general election. Some political interest group were the one that engineered that case in December 2025. And a willing and pliant judge, Peter Lifu, assisted them, said that INEC should deregister 5 political parties in one fell swoop. And these are the major opposition parties. Assuming the Court of Appeal did not come to the rescue yesterday with its judgment saying that the lower court erred and should not have asked for the deregistration of those parties, perhaps Nigeria will have boiled by now, because the opposition parties are already prepared to also not take it lying low. But it is the political class that are trying to undermine the process, eat up the polity. Imagine if you disqualify all the major opposition parties, that means the ruling party will just have a
field day,
mudslide and landslide victory. So that's why the role of the judiciary is very key and critical. The role of INEC cannot be overemphasized. INEC is the registrar and regulator of the political parties. And as I have explained, INEC can only work within the parameters of the legal framework that has been bestowed onto it not just by the Constitution, but the Electoral Act. And who are the framers of this law? It is the federal lawmakers, the senators and House of Reps members, who are representatives of different political parties. And sometimes when they make this law in such a way to be self-serving, trying to undermine, look at the old boy about electronic transmission of results, section 6 of 3, way back in February this year. Why do you have to put a proviso if you want it to work? Then you see some other underhand dealings that, you know, the political class sometimes bring to bear. Sometimes they induce staff of finding. Sometimes they make appointment of clearly partisan person to be on the board of finding. And that's why the political class is actually the most dangerous class that we have when we discuss democratic consolidation. Because if only they will allow these institutions to work, we will overtake many other, you know, first world countries. They say we are third world country. We will have by now overtake the first world country, because all we just need is right leadership and proper elections. Because election is about the recruitment of new set of leaders. Let me also break it down for you. Bimbo knew me from time past, my involvement in the electoral process. You realize that the recently held party primaries was very shambolic. And I wrote in my column in the Punch newspapers. I've been writing for Punch newspaper as a columnist since 2012. I wrote and I said, I'm ashamed of the Nigerian political class. Look at those conduct direct primaries. You said you want to do option A4. An aspirant standing in front of
party members,
and then you take a count. You have seen how they were skipping numbers, counting geometrically, and making mockery of the whole process. Somebody will say 1, 5, 25, 1,005. Is that how democracy wants to be entrenched?
Right.
Then you do consensus. Consensus, the law is very clear how to arrive at consensus. Allow aspirants to decide among themselves if they want one of them to be the candidate. But they must formally, in writing, withdraw from the race and endorse the consensus candidate. But what did we see? Imposition.
Right.
Baba Sokwe politics. The others have decided. Godfather has said. And that's what is causing all this brouhaha, that we now have hundreds of cases in court about who is the rightful winner of those primaries. So when you now bestow this kind of rancorous, contentious list on INEC to go and conduct election for them, what do you expect? So as we prepare for election now, by January 2026, February 20, some of the cases will still be in court as to who is the rightful candidate of the party.
Right, Jide, from what you've raised so far, it's beginning to look like we could also have a problem with the current federal structure that we operate in Nigeria. So if we're talking about strengthening democratic institutions, is this also a problem? Is this also where our reform should start from, taking a look at the kind of structure that we run in the country?
I don't believe it has to do with structure like that system. I don't believe. See, whether you are running a federalism or unitarism or you are doing... See, politicians are same everywhere. Some people have argued, oh, let's go back to parliamentary system of government. This presidential system is too expensive, it's too unwieldy, is this, is that. We have toyed with parliamentary system in the First Republic. We did. That was when we have Tafa Balewa as our prime minister, and we have Nnamdi Azikiwe as the ceremonial president. For about 6 years, we toyed with parliamentary system. The military said they didn't do it well. They came in and ruled us for unfettered 13 years. Return power, now they brought in presidential system. What have we made of it? But there are several countries that are making very good, they are making good use of those systems that we are condemning. So why can't we make it right? Ghana is running a presidential system like Nigeria. Since 1992, elections in Ghana have been very credible. Political parties in Ghana have been very disciplined. I have had the privilege of observing election in Ghana way back in 2008. That was the election that brought in Professor John Attamis into power. I know what I'm talking about. I've had the privilege of observing election in US, in Uganda, in Egypt, aside from Ghana. So I have some multi-country experience with elections. But
right.
the challenge is the political class. The moment they get their spirit and applies the Machiavellian principle of the end justifies the means, whether you are doing parliamentary or you are doing presidential system, it's immaterial. And in any event, let me bring it to your attention. For instance, if you say, let's do parliamentary system, look at UK. United Kingdom is where we copy parliamentary system from. Did you know that in UK, they have had 7 prime
ministers in the
10
last,
years?
absolutely.
All right, Jide.
So how do you promote political stability in that kind of situation where there is high turnover of leader? Nigeria cannot afford that kind of system. So let's make the best of our presidential system. Nothing is wrong with our presidential system. It's the operators that are not allowing things to work the way it's designed to work.
Right.
Okay, Jide, if nothing is wrong with the presidential system, what then is wrong with the electorate who are not seeing the value in their votes and the connection between their votes and their future? And how would you rate the level of voter education so far as we look forward to another round of election?
Well, INEC is doing its level best with voter education. There is a whole department with Independent National Electoral Commission that is headed by a director. So there is a department of voter education and publicity in INEC headquarters here, and they also have similarly in states. But remember, you work for a media organization. In Lagos alone, you have maybe 50, maybe 70 FM stations. Perhaps 30 or more TV stations, several online, print, and electronic media. How much can INEC vote or budget for voter education that would be enough on a sustainable basis? Because most of the media organizations are privately owned and they are in business to make money and to make profit. So even if INEC had 20 billion, 50 billion to conduct voter education, it will still not be enough because you have to do it on a sustainable basis.
Right.
And behavioral change takes a bit of time to sink and for it to be achieved. But you asked a question about the connection between people's votes and governance. That connection is what is lacking. People are asking themselves, oh, I've been voting since 1999, or since 2003, or since 2007. Yet, the road to my community is impassable. We are experiencing perennial flooding. Electricity is epileptic. The community school is dilapidated. Primary health care center is mere consulting clinic or virtually comatose and non-existent. How will you be enthusiastic to go and vote for a new set of leaders? So until when people start seeing the connection between their vote and good governance, there will continue to be low voter turnout. Because no matter the best of voter education you want to do, people are going to be asking those questions. Look at Osun. Osun election is in 2 weeks. Yet you have started having fatalities. Election day hasn't come. These people signed on to peace accord. INEC has been doing voter education in Osun. Civil society organization has invested heavily, hundreds of millions, in doing voter education across the media spectrum in Osun. Yet, the political class are saying, not in my backyard. It's a must win for me.
Right.
So when you have this must win mentality and you refuse to imbibe the spirit of sportsmanship, that in election, not everybody can be a winner, you will continue to have this whole issue of low voter turnout. And not just about connecting the vote to governance. There are other things that INEC also supposed to have done,
Okay.
that the National Assembly is supposed to have done, which they have left undone.
Right.
When I went to US in 2010 to observe election, I was shocked to realize that election hold in US for 12 to 13 hours, and there is no shutdown of the economy. In fact, election in most of the 50 states is between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. And it's usually on a Tuesday. People will go to work, people will come back from work. In fact, you can even register in some states 2 weeks to the election. In some states, you can register and vote that same day.
Right.
So there are plural voting techniques. But in Nigeria, there is no such. In other climes, there is what is called early voting.
Sure.
People like you, gentlemen and lady, you will have opportunity to have voted at least a week or two to the general election.
Right. Jide, let's also quickly, time is not our friend, we will begin to wrap up very soon. Let's also look at issues around insecurity and tie that to political violence. Are these also very strong issues that are able to weaken the institutions that we are talking about strengthening?
I didn't get that question.
Insecurity. If we tie insecurity and political violence, are these issues also part of the issues that we need to contend with if indeed we are particular about building stronger institutions?
Exactly. There are no two ways to it. They are interrelated. Electoral violence is part of insecurity. Insecurity can manifest in diverse ways. And let nobody also lie to you that even when there are no deaths, that there is no violence. There are 3 types of violence. There is psychological violence, there is physical violence, and then there is structural violence. Sometimes you don't see the physical violence, but you see the structural violence, you see the psychological violence. And then, coupled with the issue of abduction, kidnapping, banditry. So they are all intertwined and they are also affecting peaceful conduct of elections. And that's why we are spending so much money, so much resources to conduct elections. Imagine the deployment. You will hear by next week how many policemen will be deployed to Osun, how many civil defense, how many DSS, even EFCC and ICPC. They are not part of our elections, all because the political class has created an atmosphere of tension that you cannot just have election as a civic exercise that should ordinarily be devoid of tension. That should be. When I went to Egypt in 2014, people were coming to vote with their children, taking pictures. It was just so. And in Egypt, you don't even need a voter's card. Your national ID card is your voter's card. Once you are 18, you are told where to go and vote. But we haven't gotten to that level. So we need to strengthen our security framework, ensure that there's adequate security. When that happens, we will not be in a position to have less tense election and peaceful election that we will all be proud of.
Right. Before we allow you go this morning, I know that sometimes, because you're also in the media space, at least as a columnist, and one who's also monitored elections in several countries around the world. So if, as we look ahead to the 2027 elections and beyond, are you optimistic that Nigeria's democratic institutions will emerge stronger, or are we just casting shadows?
No. We should not be hopeless. We should not be hopeless. It's a work in progress. In fact, sometimes I think we are being uncharitable to ourselves, thinking that in 66 years of independence, we should have started running, not even crawling. No, it's not like that. Look at the last general election in US, the one that was held 2 years ago that brought in Donald Trump second term. Did you know that there were 2 assassination attempts on Donald Trump?
Absolutely.
Did you realize the rhetorics, the name calling, unprintable names that Kamala Harris and Donald Trump were using on themselves? If it had happened in Nigeria, say, oh, you see, it can only happen in Nigeria. If it was to be in US, it won't happen. But Donald Trump was nearly murdered. One of the assassination attempts on him raised his fear that blood was coming out. That is a country that just celebrated 250 years of independence on July 4, 2026. So if a country with centuries of electoral democracy is still grappling with some issues within their system, up till last week, Donald Trump was saying the 2020 election was stolen from him, that the Chinese had a hand in his electoral defeat. How worse can it get? This is a country that we all move forward to, that has invested so much billions of dollars through United States Agency for International Development in Nigeria. Yet you have that kind of system where one individual is undermining that system, making the rest of the world to believe that that system is not foolproof and not flawless the way they are trying to market it to the rest of the world. So we should not be uncharitable to ourselves. It's a work in progress. We don't want the military to come back. Remember last year, October, there was a coup attempt on the president, which by the grace of God was spoiled. We never want the military to come back to power. So we need to continue to call out those who want to undermine our democracy, but we must also be vigilant, because as the popular saying goes, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty.
This will be a fine place to leave this conversation this morning. Thank you so much, Jide Ojo, all the way from Abuja, joining us via Zoom, for speaking with us this morning and giving us your expertise on this topic. We appreciate your thoughts.
My pleasure always. You have a great day.
And you too. Right, we've been speaking with our guest this morning, and it's helped us make meaning of the topic before us this morning, talking about building viable democratic institutions, of course, here in Nigeria. We will take a quick break. When the conversation returns, Joy will be here with her Lagos conversation.
The views expressed on this program do not represent that of the producer, management of Lagos Television, or the Lagos State Government. They remain the perspectives of those expressing them. Thank you for staying with Lagos Television.